Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in Canada. My name is Huba Khatun. I'm the Regional Innovation Director in the Prairies at the Canadian Food Innovation Network. At Canadian Food Innovation Network, we help every food and beverage company in Canada reach their full potential. We do that by connecting them to new ideas, to opportunities, and through technologies. We also fund transformative food tech projects that stimulate innovation, stimulate collaboration, and also foster kind of a growing community for food and beverage businesses and professionals. We want to welcome you to today's webinar. It's on intellectual property, which is essential for food innovators. It's an incredible start to 2025 because we have nearly 250 registrants for today's webinar. And I am really excited to guide you through this session. Your food and technology business may start off as a passion project, but understanding intellectual property is crucial for growth and innovation. So, in today's session, we're diving right into how IP can really work for you and your business. We'll discuss practical tips and strategies to help you protect your ideas, transform them into valuable assets, and leverage them to stand out in a competitive food tech industry. I also want to take a moment to let you know that this is CFIN's first ever Unpuzzling webinar of the series. We intend to do 9 more webinars when we have them planned in 2025. So if today's session sparks your curiosity, I do encourage you to join us for the sessions to come over the year. The chat is open for you. So if you have anything you'd like to ask regarding IP, just type it into the chat and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can by the end of this webinar. Okay, let's start. So the goal today is simple. We want to show you how IP can add value to your business, point you to the right resources and funding that can help you, and share some actionable advice from really great people that will be in this webinar today for companies that are tech-driven or even food processors to use. Statistically speaking, only about 4% of Canadian companies actually have an IP strategy. So this is something that's often overlooked, but it's also very important, and this is our focus today. Let's start. So first off, we want to introduce you to Canadian Intellectual Property Office. They are an operation agency, a special agency through innovation, science, and economic development. They have offices spread out across Canada, and they deliver intellectual property services in Canada to educate Canadians on how to use IP more effectively. Today, we have Dumitru Olario, who is an intellectual property advisor at Canadian Intellectual Property Office. Dumitru, would you please come online? Excellent. So, Dumitru, wonderful to have you here today. Please give us a quick rundown on how IP really impacts value and profitability, and any areas on IP, how it matters to the food tech sector as well. The floor is yours.
So thank you very much for the invitation. Let me share my screen. I think you have it now. Am I right?
Yes, all good.
Oh. 1 second. Give me a couple of more seconds to see.
No problem. If you'd like, I can share my screen as well. I have your presentation.
I think it would be better.
If I share it?
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. Can you see?
Yes, can you put it in full view mode? Okay, so I'm very privileged to start our intellectual property talk about food tech companies, and let me dive into the subject right away. Next slide, please. So here on the second slide, you see the main types of IP that you find in Canada. IP, as a general definition, is a creation of the mind, and the first owner of IP rights is the creator. And the IP right consists in some sort of say that the creator has, or the owner of the intellectual property rights vis-a-vis the creation, on how it's used, this kind of creation. And depends on what kind of creation you have, a different type of intellectual property. And the main types of intellectual property in Canada for brands are the trademarks, for example. For creations from the technological scientific field, you have patent rights. Trade secret may be any kind of confidential information that has some sort of value to be more competitive. Uh, Copyright here, the creation is from the cultural field in general. Industrial designs, they deal with the visual aspect of a product. These are the main types of IP, but you also have plant breeders' rights, integrated circuit topographies, personality rights in Canada. But we will talk about this, and also towards the end, I will also cover the intellectual property strategy that might be relevant for you. So few words about, in general, this kind of intellectual property rights are limited in time. They're also territorial, with some exception, I would say. They cost differently. They act differently as well. And we will go one by one, and you'll see the main differences, and also giving you some examples from different types of IP that are applicable to the field of food tech companies. Next slide, please. So trademarks. Trademarks are a sign used to differentiate products and services of different persons. And this kind of signs might be words, designs, sounds. These are traditional trademarks, but may be also tastes, scents, holograms, moving images. Once you formalize this trademark right, you have the right to exclude others of using the same kind of sign to identify similar like products and services. And the protection may be based on use, and you may also register the trademark. The registration is optional, but to maintain in good standing, you also have to use it consistently as registered. Once registered, the protection lasts for 10 years, and it's renewable every 10 years. As a good tip, mark your trademark TM if it's just under common law and not yet registered, and with an R encircled when it's registered. So next slide, please. In the trademark and food trademarks in food tech examples are here on this slide. You may brand your company, and you may decide for a sign that will identify the products and services of the company. So you may use that kind of protection. And you also have another kind of examples. You may get trademark for a line of products or services that, and in this way you'll have the exclusive use, and you'll prevent confusion in the market. Next slide. So here you have the patent rights. The subject matters I mentioned, creations from the technological scientific field, might be any product, process, machine, composition of matter that is new in the world, useful, has some sort of utility, and also is inventive. It's non-obvious, as we call it. In order to obtain the patent right, you have to apply in order to have the patent application examined, and then the patent granted to you. Once you have the patent granted, you have the right to exclude others from using, making, or selling what you claim as your invention in the patent document for up to 20 years from the filing date. It's important not to disclose the information that it's the subject of the patentable invention. If there are grace periods, not advisable to be used, though, in Canada and the United States, 12 months grace period. Examples from food tech sector, if I may, next slide. You have the composition, new formulations for food products. You also may have composition based on plants, functional foods. Keep in mind that all these compositions, they have to be new, useful, and inventive in order to be patentable. You also have different processes, manufacturing processes that deal with efficient ways to prevent food, enhance flavors, create new textures. This might be patentable. Packaging technologies, different packaging, they come with some sort of unique functional features. They may be environmentally friendly, or you may have like a preserving function there. That might be patentable. Next slide, please. So trade secrets. Here is any kind of information that gives you a competitive advantage. Might be product related, as for patents. And actually, when you try to patent, you keep secret the object of the invention. And but might be trade related. Trade related will be a list of suppliers, customers, different information from your business plan, and so on. The trade secret protection is tied to your ability to keep it secret. No registration is just a contractual obligation. The protection lasts as long as confidentiality is maintained. It's important not to disclose when you have something that might be patenting later on. Next slide. Examples from trade secrets in food tech are recipes and formulations, recipes that, again, you have an advantage by keeping it secret. Keep in mind that also you cannot be protected when someone reverse engineers this kind of formulation. So processes and techniques also the same thing. If someone can find out how to do it and come with an original actually process, they can your trade secret protection at that stage might be lost. Next slide, please. Other forms of IP that might be applicable in food tech field would be like industrial design. Here, the protection is for creation that deal with the visual aspect of a product, original shape, configuration, pattern, apply to a manufactured article. As for patents, you have to apply in order to have your design register. There is an application, but once you get your design registered, you have the right to exclude others from making, using, selling, exhibiting for sale that particular design up to 15 years from the filing date. Again, 12 months grace period is important to keep in mind. From the moment you disclose the design, you have the possibility to file and obtain an industrial design registration. Examples from food tech field, next slide, please, is original look of packaging, of course, and you may use them as a trademark as well. If you have an app to sell your products in that particular field, you may use the protection as an industrial design protection for so-called graphical user interfaces, the icons that appear on your smartphone or desktop computer. Next slide, please. The last type of IP that I will cover today is the copyright. It protects original work from the cultural field. it's a bundle of exclusive rights, is automatic at the creation, and the duration, it's usually the life of the author plus 70 years. And because Canada signed main international convention on copyright, you may consider that form of IP as international somehow. Next slide. Examples for copyright protection in the food tech would be that kind of work that is related to instruction materials, marketing content, design of products or packaging. This might be covered by copyright, and it's a good practice to acknowledge people like that. Now, next slide. Let's dive quickly. What is an IP strategy? When you'll have some sort of good management system for your intellectual property assets, you may have some sort of harmony between how IP works and your business objectives. So an IP strategy, as a general definition, are decisions and methods designed to maximize the contribution of your IP assets or portfolio to achieve your business goals. Next slide, please. So this is an example of an IP strategy. You start with an IP audit, see whatever you have. Then you may do an external IP audit, see what your competition is doing in terms of IP. And then you'll analyze those findings and you'll identify the gaps and the opportunities. That would be like the third step in the IP strategy. Then you'll create the plan and you'll set goals, what the IP you are looking for formalizing or disposing in some instances. And then you'll implement your strategy. You'll communicate that within your business. That's a very good practice to make it work properly. And then you'll also reassess and realign, ideally each twice a year, I would say, this plan, because the conditions might change over time. So next slide, please. I'll go very quickly. CIPO has been presented before. It's the main agency that administers main types of IP in Canada. It also has a special department dealing with raising awareness for the effective use of IP, educating Canadians how to better use the system. Next slide, please. Here you have a link with IP resources. I strongly advise you to go on our website. Next. This is the main contact information. If you are interested in an IP consultation and having a conversation, please go. You may find my coordinates and my colleagues' coordinates, intellectual property advisor, on our website. Thank you very much for the time allocated.
Thank you very much, Dimitru. This was a great overview. It really drives home, how important it is for food tech companies to think seriously about their IP strategies. Thank you. Up next is another national support organization called Elevate IP. They're funded by Government of Canada. They came to life in 2022, and Elevate IP helps business accelerators and incubators provide Canadian companies with the tools to understand and strategically manage and leverage their IP. So they support startups, they increase IP awareness, they build tools and strategies. They also provide funding for IP development. So super excited to have Lala Laji here today, who's the venture manager at Elevate IP in Alberta. She's going to share some things about funding opportunities related to IP and more around resources and success stories. So Layla, I'll give the stage to you.
Thank you so much for having me today. Are you able to see the screen? Just want to double check.
Yes, all good.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm from Elevate IP Alberta, and Elevate IP is a funding program, and I'm here to talk about some funding opportunities for IP-related initiatives. So across Canada, Elevate IP has a number of different funding recipients or that are region-based. So depending on where you live in Canada, you would have a different Elevate IP kind of organizer or funding program. So if you're in Alberta, you would go to Elevate IP Alberta for funding supports and resources. If you're in the Atlantic, you would go to Springboard Atlantic, who is the main recipient there. For Quebec, the main contact or the main resource provider is Maine. Communitech supports the provinces of Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, and New Ventures BC supports British Columbia and the Northern Territories and province. But regardless of where you live, the offerings are more or less the same. So we're broken out into 3 specific areas of supports and opportunities. So the first one is education and awareness around intellectual property. So what is intellectual property and how you can utilize it in your business. The second kind of funding opportunity is developing IP strategies, and we'll go into these more in depth throughout the presentation. But the final one is implementing IP strategies. So all recipients across Canada, all Elevate IP programs have these 3 main components, but we might implement them in a different way. And I apologize in advance for any Alberta-based Alberta bias in this presentation. So when it comes to education and awareness, the main goal is for entrepreneurs and food innovators or innovators in general to learn more about intellectual property. So whether that's through an online module or workshops or events, resources, mentorship sessions, I'd like to highlight a few key pieces or a few key programs from the different recipients here that you can access. So Accelerate IP has great online modules as well as an IP resource library. So I would go check out their resource library, as they have great resources around not only the different types of intellectual property, but also resources around IP strategies and things like that. Elevate IP Alberta, also we have some online modules that are free for anyone to access and to use. More coming around industries there, but that is a good opportunity as well. Atlantic IP has what they call intellectual property counselors, or so one-on-one sessions where you meet with an intellectual property counselor to discuss opportunities in your business, which is a unique opportunity there. Momentum IP or Momentum PI out of Quebec also does free online training and training with their participants, as well as Communitech, which is Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. They also have free access to all of these resources as well. So we share the educational component across Canada. The next support was for IP strategy funding. So this is trying to navigate what is IP and working with an IP service provider and funding your own customized IP strategy to fit your business model or your ideas. So some highlights here, Momentum IP, which is again Quebec, they have an 18-month curated IP journey for their entrepreneurs, which is a little different than, well, every program is a little different, but theirs is an 18-month curated IP journey. Communitech has a really cool business accelerator and incubator integration into their program to build capacity around intellectual property and get that out into their entrepreneurial community. And our focus at Elevate IP Alberta is to really develop a strong understanding of IP strategies. So this is where we really focus our programming, is around building strong IP strategies as well. So when we talk about an IP strategy, I know we got a bit of an overview for SIPO, but it's really building out learning next steps of how to access and integrate intellectual property into your business strategy. So in Alberta, as part of Elevate IP Alberta, we look at your business strategy, your business plans, and then help you build out an IP inventory, looking at competitor landscapes and what other people are doing in terms of IP that might be of help to you. We help to build IP protection strategies, help you budget how much you might be spending on intellectual property. Then there's also monetization opportunities, licensing opportunities, and then contingency planning. So what happens if someone infringes on your intellectual property, or if you infringe on somebody else, like what are those next steps for you? So this is the basis of the IP strategy based off of CIPO's guidelines, and this is similar to what the other provinces are doing as well in IP strategy development. Where funding is concerned, these are the funding amounts that are provided in each region. So Accelerate IP provides up to $25,000 in funding to develop IP strategies. Now the requirements will be different for all programs, but Atlantic IP Advantage provides up to 50. Elevate IP Alberta provides up to $15,000 in IP strategy funding. Momentum IP pays $3,000 of a $12,000. No, sorry, you as the entrepreneur pay $3,000 of the total $12,000 strategy cost. So there's some support there, as well as Communitech, who has up to $100,000 in overall funding of the program. And then the final pool is for implementation funding and implementing your IP strategies. So once you've identified the key types of intellectual property that you will be pursuing, this fund then helps to pay for the drafting of intellectual property applications. So that drafting process often happens with a lawyer or patent agent or trademark agent or an IP expert or professional. They help to draft the applications. So that's the funding covered there. And then the filing of the hard costs of filing those applications and registrations. So that's what this pool does. And here the funding again looks a little different for each recipient, but Accelerate IP has up to $60,000, Atlantic IP up to $50,000, Elevate IP, Momentum IP, and Communitech all have a maximum of $100,000, but it really depends on the program how much is provided to each recipient. So a little less clarity there, but I'm happy to off the call. Some quick tips on preparing an application, or something we like to share with our entrepreneurs, is to first identify the Elevate IP program and that is in your region and that best fits your location, and familiarize yourself with their program requirements. Learn about what the program is like and how to and the different application processes and things like that. And the second tip is to have a strong understanding of your business strategy. Understanding your business itself will help you identify the different opportunities in intellectual property. So depending on what makes you unique? Are you brand-based or are you tech-based? Are you, do you have a strong competitive advantage? What makes you different? Who are your competitors? Are you looking to expand into different markets? All of these considerations that are mostly found on the business side are what builds a strong foundation for an IP strategy. So having a strong business strategy will help you layer in the intellectual property and build a strong IP strategy. And then the third one is to familiarize yourself with intellectual property, some opportunities, some risks, and how it can advance you in your business and your innovations. So my final question is, what are you creating and is it protected? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leila. It's awesome to see how funding programs like Elevate IP are making it easier for food innovators to protect their ideas and grow their businesses. Now I see all the amazing questions rolling in. Before we start our panel, we want to launch a poll. We want to help understand kind of your current stage of the IP strategy. So we'll quickly share a poll now. We want to know if you're in an early idea phase or actively filling IP or managing an existing portfolio, or exploring commercialization strategies. So please take a moment to respond. Your input will really help us tailor the discussion here onwards. So there's two questions in the poll. One is around where you are on your IP journey. And once that's complete, we'll ask the next question, which is around how Canadian Food Innovation Network can support your IP goals. While you're doing this, again, great questions rolling in. So feel free to think of any questions and jot them down in the chat. We'll address as many as we can later on in the session. Great. So the next, this is a good mix. A lot of people that are early on in their strategy. Great to see that. Some that are expanding their portfolio. Wonderful. Okay, so the next question that we'll ask is more around how Canadian Food Innovation Network can help you with your IP goals. We are here to help you navigate complexities and understand IP. We want to know about kind of where challenges are at, what opportunities do you face as well, whether it's networking that you're looking for or kind of deeper mentorship support, or access to the right funding for IP protection, or connecting with experts, assessing tools, understanding your business practices, all of those. While you're doing this, I do want to let you know that we have two more webinars that are upcoming. So February 27th will be a food sector automation webinar, which my colleague Tyson McInnes will share on near the end of this webinar. And on March 6th, we have a webinar on empowering women in the food industry, which will be led by Dana McCauley, CEO of Steven. So please keep an eye out for those. We've shared a link to both of them in the chat. Great, so a good mix of everything. Wonderful. Thanks for your responses. Okay, so time for our panel. Ella, Ali, and Leslie, would you please come online? I'll start with a round of introductions, and then we can get the conversation started. So Ella, perhaps we can start with you first. You have started 3 startups. One has been acquired by AstraZeneca. You have 12 IPs under your belt. So you're an investor on those 12 patents. Can you share a little bit more about what inspired you? You're now at Conestoga College. Want to learn more about what inspired your passion for IP and really how your career has evolved over the years.
Thank you, Huba and Sifan, for having me on this panel. Yes, initially I started my career as a curious scientist, and we were all focusing on, it'd be kind of interesting or unique to try this. But it became more important when we start rubbing shoulders with investors and trying to understand what the market demands. The market problem, addressing the market problem seems to be very important, and you need to align your innovation with what the market gaps are. And the number one thing that kept coming up is that what is your IP strategy? So I started out with creating IP, And then I shifted into creating IP and managing IP. And I saw firsthand how having an IP strategy was really detrimental in some of the success that I've seen in the startups that I was involved in. And it is the IP is the, if you look at CIPO's website and they have this chart on the S&P 500, the components of S&P 500, the valuation of the companies, 92% of the valuation of the companies on S&P 500 comes from their intangible assets, 92. So it is the most important assets. And if you're, whatever your commercialization plan, whether you're going to be licensing or you're looking for an exit or initial public offering on a NASDAQ or, listing on a NASDAQ or other places, understanding what you have, what is your strategy on utilizing it and protecting it, and then how does it fit in with the landscape around. So again, it started as creating IP, and I was kind of forced into understanding how to manage the IP and then how important that is for the commercialization goals.
Thank you. Thanks, Ella. Leslie, you're the VP of Sustainability and Communications at Food Cycle Science, a company that has recently been funded through Canadian Food Innovation Network for a project. And you're pioneering sustainability throughout technology research and partnerships. Can you tell us about your work, what excites you about what you're doing, and what are some initiatives you're taking on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Food Cycle Science is a global leader in food recycling solutions, and we're sold under the brand Food Cycler. What excites me about the work we're doing is it really is a new category, especially to North America. It's been around in other Asian countries a little bit more, but we're really pioneering, food waste recycling in an entirely new way. And that means that, it's a little more complex, a little more challenging carving out IP in this space. And, of relevance to this conversation today, when you're a leader, you're really testing the waters. But the success in this category means more and more market entrants. And over the past, year, 18 months, we've seen, following in our footsteps, so many more entrants into this category. And so it's become more and more important to keep a watchful, proactive, and strategic eye on our IP.
Yeah, excellent. Wonderful. Ali, you're a partner at Fasken. You co-lead the National Food and Beverage Group. You do quite a bit of work. You're a trusted advisor in the food and beverage space and tech sectors as well. And you've been part of a lot of transformative deals and products. I want to know a little bit more about kind of how you work in the agri-food sector. What drives your passion in this space?
Yeah, no, it's an incredibly fun space to practice law in, because you get to work with companies. I work with companies anywhere from literally two founders in a kitchen or a basement with an idea, right through to hopefully that big exit transaction where hopefully somebody puts lots of money in their jeans for the amazing company that they've built. And as Ella mentioned, in addition to all the corporate and transactional stuff I do, IP is a big portion of where that value is created and where it's held for these companies. So, having a proper strategy in place, having proper ownership of your IP becomes quite critical, not only from an IP perspective, but if you want to sort of build your business to an investable or sellable asset, it's kind of a must-have to have that buttoned down properly.
Yeah, agreed. So Ali, since I have you here, let's talk a little bit about contracts. So contracts can be a business's first kind of line of defense when it comes to protecting IP. What are some key clauses that companies should be looking at when it comes to contractors with suppliers or retailers or co-packers or collaborators?
Yeah, maybe I'll separate it kind of into three buckets. Like there's so much that can happen contractually, but I would say sort of for early to growth stage companies, there's sort of 3 buckets of things that I would be thinking about. One is contracts with your internal team. So when you're hiring employees or consultants, you want to make sure that those contracts have IP assignment clauses in them so that any work those folks are doing for your company are owned by the company. So the company should be the repository for the IP. You don't want employees or consultants saying later on, oh, I know I developed this really good idea and this great product or this great recipe while I was working for you, but hey, actually that's mine. I never assigned it to you. And it does come up, and if it comes up later when either that person has left your company or maybe not be on the best terms with your company, which happens, they may not be willing to sign documents at that time. So you want to make sure you have those in place right from hiring. And what I would say is that in Canada, for employees, the presumption at law is that the employer owns their work product. So you have that backstop, but we would say in all cases, you still want a proper IP assignment clause in your contract. For consultants, and you're hiring an R&D person or a consultant or whatever, the presumption is that the consultant owns the IP. So if you don't have a contract that says the consultant is assigning it to you or to your company, that consultant owns the IP absent, you getting into a big fight about it otherwise. But the presumption at law is, unless you say otherwise, the consultant owns it. So I would say that's bucket one. Bucket two is sort of, you'll have companies out here who are starting to talk to other business partners. So you're not quite at a contract yet, but you're talking, you're seeing if there's the possibility to work together. And there will be a time during those discussions where you'll say, hey, like, in order to see if we really want to work together, I have to sort of open the kimono a bit more and share something about my business. But without a non-disclosure agreement or NDA, that information is not protected. So I would consider in your business having sort of a template NDA that you can use for when business discussions get to the point that you're not quite at a contract yet, but you're sharing more than sort of general information. And that doesn't mean that you are sort of asking everybody for an NDA every time you talk to them the first time. It's really once it gets to a stage that you're sharing sensitive information, you want to have that protected, because otherwise you run the risk of that information being used for sort of unintended purposes. And then bucket three, I would say, is sort of some of the contract types that you mentioned. When you're running your business, you can have all sorts of contracts. It could be co-manufacturing, it could be R&D development, it could be supplier retailer contracts. I think in those contracts, what you want to make sure is that you've got clauses that are appropriate to protect your IP. So typically those clauses include recognition that your company owns whatever it already owns. So for example, its trademarks, its current products and recipes and trade secrets, whatever the case may be, that they will treat all of that information as confidential for both the term of the contract and beyond. And if there is any new IP being developed as part of that relationship, you want clarity similar to your employees and consultants that you own that IP. So the classic example is the co-man who you give them the recipe, but they tweak 10% of it in the end to add some better flavor or better texture or whatever in the manufacturing process. You want to make sure your contract says you own that, so that person can't hold you for ransom later and say, oh no, that, this recipe is mine. Like, I never gave you all these improvements I made. So, there's lots of things we could talk about, but I'll pause there. I think that's probably some of the main things that I'd want to see covered from an IP perspective.
This is quite useful. Working with consultants, looking into NDAs, picking up appropriate clauses when creating contracts. All of this very, very, very important when companies create contracts. I'll take the conversation back to you and talk a little bit about trade secrets. So trade secrets are often overlooked in the food and beverage industry. What qualifies as a trade secret in this space is often overlooked as well. And that's my question to you. What exactly does qualify as a trade secret in food and beverage, and why is it so important to protect?
Yeah, and I will touch on some aspects of what Ali has mentioned about what to include in a contract. But I mean, trade secrets, I mean, the definition of trade secrets, it's confidential information with monetary value, really. And the one thing that we do when we sit down with companies and provide them consultation, first is you need to document what it is that the innovation, the IP that you created. So you've seen the presentation by Dimitru, or even Layla, that talking about the IP audit, identifying what IP that you have, okay, and then documenting it and then cataloging it. And even if there are, you know, if in a contractual agreement, it you know, any IP issue comes up, at least you have it captured in a document. You understand what was created in a document, and that we call this an IP disclosure document or form. And you have whatever it is that was you know, innovated, was a process or a composition of matter or whatsoever, and then you have the inventors, right? And then that serves as the document that will be utilized for any IP transfer, or it removes any ambiguity about if there were any trade secrets shared. This is the trade secret. So I highly recommend that for all companies, especially in the food sector. I mean, trade secret is going to be their default go-to strategy for a lot of that, but there are times where they might want to seek out patent applications for certain processes or machines or what other patentable subject matters. But you know, it is so important. I could not stress this enough for people just to start with documenting, identifying and documenting what IP they have, and then who were the creators, and was there any public disclosure of this IP? This is something that that we provide to all the companies that we work with, and then documenting, providing them documents and providing them tools on how to catalog that IP asset. And if you were to be speaking to a third party or your own employees internally, there's no ambiguity about what is the trade secret. It's documented.
Wonderful. Documenting, absolutely important. Are you seeing any other kind of common mistakes that businesses make when it comes to managing their IP? You know, what have you been seeing? We're trying to track it into how they can avoid those mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff like that Ali touched on is that, you know, if you had an employer and then they left and then they may utilize, you know, something similar and iterations of what, you know, again, the lack of documentation, you know, there's no ambiguity on, you know, what was created while they were an employer at your own organization. Also, if you're in a partnership relationship with a third party, and then there were some sharing of trade secrets, again, it's that documentation. They know what was trade secret, and you would label it as confidential information. Please label your confidential information as confidential when you do share it with a third party, even as a non-disclosure. When you are, especially when you are in some sort of confidentiality arrangements between the two. I've seen, you know, court cases where the court sided with defendant because they were unaware that the information that was shared with them was confidential. So the onus was on the provider of the confidential information to share that this is confidential. So again, identifying what it is, documenting it under who are the inventors, and then when sharing internally or externally, people need to know that it is confidential.
Thank you, Ala. This is extremely useful information. Leslie, you know, CFIN provided Food Cycle Science $1.6 million, $1.65 million in funding to support your work in using enzymes in the food cycler system. How, within that project, how has prioritizing IP supported your growth? What lessons have you learned along the way?
There are so many lessons learned. It's really hard to choose one. When I first started on this IP portfolio about 3 years ago, I thought I had a decent grasp of IP, Turned out it was far more nuanced and complex than I expected. I naively thought at the time, you have an invention, you file a patent, you're good. That is far from the case. A bit of background on food cycle science. We manage a large IP portfolio across, well, we have a large IP portfolio across multiple countries, everything from patents, trade secrets, trademarks. And as our portfolio grew, you know, especially under the new R&D and commercialization efforts funded by CFIN, so did the complexities. Multiple office actions, tight deadlines, growing budgets, coordinating documentation and multiple parties, multiple jurisdictions. And it became quickly clear that much more of a proactive strategic approach was really critical. We did lean heavily on external IP lawyers and various programs were funding of Elevate IP as well, another great program. But we really needed to start building more internal capacity, and there's very good reasons for that. When your team's involved, your patent claims, for example, are more likely to stay true to the actual invention and reflect the iterations that might have happened after filing. So, you know, what I discovered is you might have filed a patent and your group sat down with your IP lawyer, and then eventually it gets to the examiner and there's some negotiating of terminology of certain clauses in some of your claims. If you're not, you know, if your IP lawyer doesn't have a really good grasp of this, specifically why your invention is valuable to you as a company and your business objectives, they might continue negotiating some of those claims. And in the end, it could be that what your patent and what your claims actually say aren't terribly valuable to you. So you really can't sleep on the job here. You need to keep a watchful eye. You need to build a team internally that really understands this stuff and leverage the programs that are out there, because there's a swath of information out there right now helping you to understand IP and fund it. And we still do heavily rely on our external IP lawyers. A really good IP lawyer is worth their weight in gold. But you also need to build internal teams and internal processes. So, you know, I've discovered that an IP strategy is more like a rose bush. You need to keep deadheading and pruning so that it stays healthy. You need to review your claims. You need to adapt to market changes, ensure your IP evolves with your business, and keep a really, really watchful eye and updated competitor listing and competitor landscape. Because, you know, as I mentioned early on, we kind of are spearheading this new category, and suddenly there's tons of entrants. So, you know, we need to step back and say, well, are our unique inventions still competitive now that there's all these new companies in this space? So it's a regular process, but it has become a really incredibly valuable asset for our company, and it's certainly worthwhile.
Thank you. This is a wealth of information. You know, I really, really wish that we had all day to speak on this, because we're just scratching the surface. But I do really appreciate, thank you, Leslie, thank you, Ala, thank you, Ali, for sharing your insights, your expertise. As someone who works daily to connect to innovators and drive change within Canadian Food Innovation Network, I am truly inspired by the depth of knowledge in this room. We have about 6 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll give the floor over to my colleague, Julie Degley, who will now facilitate a Q&A session. Julie, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Hugo, the speakers, the panelists. We heard terrific insights about IP, and well, we're running out of time. But what I suggest is to ask one questions from the questions that have been asked on this chat, and the other ones will be answered through email and sent to you later on. So let's go for the first one, and probably the only one, but the question is about trademarks. When you should register your trademark internationally, do you need to do it before you start doing business in other countries? So who would like to answer these questions?
I can start, and others can can jump in. So this is kind of a classic thing for early stage sort of food, beverage, agribusiness companies, because in a perfect world, you would trademark everywhere, just, wherever you're selling products, wherever you're going to soon be selling products. But, that's sort of expensive, and you got to be careful with your costs early on. So I think you can go into a market and you can sell product there. But the risk is that, if you're selling product and somebody else registers that trademark first and can demonstrate usage, it gives them a monopoly over using that trademark in that country. So what I tend to see our clients do is, Canada and the US have a bit of a reciprocal treaty where you can file in Canada. It gives you a bit of a grace period. I think it's 6 or 12 months to move that application to the US as well. So often they start there. And then they look at the key markets that they're going into, and sort of it becomes a cost benefit analysis of when are we ready to start protecting this name in other jurisdictions where we're planning to sell and incur that cost, because our brand is strong enough and we expect revenue to be strong enough to support that. And in Europe, there's the Madrid Protocol, which allows you now much more easily to you used to have to file in every sort of European country separately. Now you can kind of have an application, tick off where you want it, pay the associated fee. So the process is a little bit easier. But I would say it's sort of a bit of a cost benefit analysis in terms of what works. But if you see something being a key market and you expect sales to be strong there and you have the resources to do it, trademarking it early is always better.
Okay, thank you. Okay, really a last one, because it's a good one. Jenna Woolston, I would like to know, how does it work with the retribution with a co-packer that wants to use their business's trade secrets, like ingredients, recipes, suppliers, that are protected in their contract? Who would like to answer this question? Anyone?
Sorry, Julie, can you just repeat that question?
Yeah. So Jenna would like to know how to use, how does it work, the retribution from a co-packer that wants to use their business trademarks secret?
Okay, so they are looking to.
They're protected in the contract. But
and the co-packer would like to utilize it.
Yeah.
Yes. That sounds to me like a potential license play here, that they could potentially license their trade secret. Again, I'm not talking from the business, I'm talking from an IP commercial, how this could be facilitated if this is a trade secret that they have, and they can potentially license it to whomever third party that would like to manufacture. We've had, I've held some companies on licensing strategies where they will, manufacture their product for a particular market, but there could be either the process or certain from within their IP that another company is interested for a different market. And this would expand the channels, revenue channels, by licensing it to that company for a different market, or it could be licensing for a different jurisdiction. There's a lot of ways that you could have a licensing framework around your trade secrets.
Thank you for your answer. Well, it's all the time we have for the Q&A. A real quick word from our colleague Tyson McInnes, representing the Atlantic region, about the upcoming webinar where he and I will be hosting. So Tyson, to you.
Hey, thanks Julie, and thanks everyone. This has been a great webinar. I've learned a lot, and it's the first of a series that we're doing, as was mentioned by Huba earlier. And our next one I will be hosting. I'm excited to do that. It's going to be on food automation success stories in Canada. And I'd like to take a moment just to share a few reasons why you might want to join us for that next month, February 27th at 1 o'clock Eastern. We have 3 great companies lined up that are going to be sharing some of their insights, Gastronomist, Relocalize, and Area 52. And a few reasons you might want to join. First of all, it wouldn't matter what element or channel in the food sector you're involved in or interested in. we have you covered. We have someone with a solution that's geared towards food processing, another one towards food service operations, and a third that's focused on retail. So that part's great. And then secondly, if you're here on this session today, you're probably a bit of an innovator, bringing a new product to market, a new solution. And even if you're not in the automation world, you can learn a lot from the experience that these three entrepreneurs have taken in terms of building up their business, the business models they're building, and attracting customers and scaling. So I always like getting under the hood, talking to other entrepreneurs and learning from them, and you can always gain a lot. And then finally, if you just love to hear cool innovations about food, you know, and be inspired a bit, especially companies from Canada, we have 3 of them next time on our webinar. So hope you have a chance to sign up. You can do that on our website, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, Julie.
Well, thank you all. That's all the time we have. Thank you for being part of Stephen, for participating on Yodel, helping other members. We'll be doing more in-person event in your province in 2025, so make sure you follow our calendar event. And see you soon in February in the next webinar. So keep being awesome and have a great afternoon. Thank you.